Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. I caught my stepmother lying about my inheritance. I exposed her secrets to the family. I'm standing in my dad's lawyer's boardroom with 20 pairs of eyes on me, my heart banging so hard I can feel it in my gums, and my stepmother frozen at the end of the table with her fake grief mask slipping just enough for me to see the panic underneath. In my hands is a stack of printed emails and bank statements that suddenly feel like they weigh about 10 kilos. The lawyer clears his throat and says, very calmly, "Emma, if you're going to make an allegation about the will, this is the time to do it." And that's when I finally say the sentence I've been rehearsing for weeks. She lied. Dad did not leave everything to her. She's been hiding the original will and stealing my inheritance. Diane, my stepmother, actually laughs at first. A short, sharp sound that bounces off the glass walls. "Oh, don't be ridiculous," she says, clutching her little black clutch bag like it's a life raft. She's upset. Grief does strange things. Greg changed his mind before he died. Everyone knows that. My Aunt Nora's face tightens. My uncle shifts in his seat. The lawyer looks from Diane to me, then back at the folder in front of him, the one that has last will and testament of Gregory Harris, neatly typed on the front. My hands are shaking so badly that the pages rustle, but I force myself to walk around the table and lay my copies down in front of him. "Check the dates," I say. "Check the signatures. And maybe ask Diane why there are transfers from Dad's account into hers for months before he died, when she kept telling me he was broke." It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything actually started to unravel. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just me sitting on Dad's old recliner in my childhood living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes, while Diane fluttered around making a performance of sorting his personal effects. Dad had died 3 weeks earlier. Heart failure. He was 63 and had spent the last year in and out of hospital, looking smaller and more fragile every time I visited. By the end, he was a pale version of himself, tethered to machines and pain meds, apologizing for being a burden in a voice that barely sounded like his. Diane had married him 5 years ago, 2 years after my mom died of breast cancer. At first, I was honestly relieved he'd found someone. I was in my final year of uni, drowning in assignments and grief, and the thought of him sitting alone in the house every night made my stomach hurt. When he introduced us at a cafe, she seemed fine. Polished. Blonde bob, French manicure, a blouse that probably cost more than my entire outfit. She laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, and called me sweetheart, in a way that felt rehearsed, but not outright hostile. The red flags were small at first. Little comments about how cluttered the house was with Mum's things. The way family photos featuring Mum would disappear slowly from the walls, replaced by tasteful abstract prints that brightened up the space. Dad started saying things like, "You know your stepmom just wants us to have a fresh start, and maybe you can take some of these old boxes to your flat, and we don't have the space." I swallowed my discomfort because Dad looked happy. He'd lost weight, started going on weekend trips again. He'd send me pictures of them at wineries or on coastal walks, both of them smiling in that slightly forced way people smile for Facebook. Money was never a big topic when I was growing up, but I knew Dad had a paid-off house, a decent retirement account, and a small life insurance policy from his job. Mum's will had left everything to him, with the explicit line that any remaining estate is to be divided equally among our children in the event of Gregory's death. Since I'm an only child, that basically meant me. I didn't think about it much. It was this abstract, far-off thing. One day, when Dad is old and it's his time, there'll be something to help me. Then he got sick. At first it was a bit of chest tightness and the doctor just wants to run some tests. Within a year we'd had the heart attack, the triple bypass, the infection, the readmission. Hospital beeps and antiseptic smell became the background noise to my late 20s. Diane took charge. She was at every appointment, every bedside. The nurses knew her by name. She kept a neat little notebook of Dad's medications, appointments, and test results. She also started saying things like, "Your father's had to cash in a lot of things to cover medical bills, and there won't be much left, sweetheart, but that's okay. You're independent. You understand." I did understand that healthcare is expensive and that Dad would absolutely prioritize his life over my hypothetical future inheritance. Of course he would. So every time she said something about financial strain, I nodded and swallowed the knot in my throat. Still, there were odd moments. Like the time I came over unexpectedly and saw a glossy brochure for a Bali resort on the table, one of those all-inclusive, adults-only places, with dates circled 6 months earlier. "Oh, that was just something we thought about before his last surgery," she said, a bit too quickly, shoving it into a drawer. "We never went. Too expensive." Or the time Dad, groggy on painkillers, told me he'd sorted things out properly with his will and that I didn't need to worry about Diane being taken care of because there's plenty for both of you. When I asked him later, when he was more lucid, he just patted my hand and said, "You'll be okay, love." I made sure. The day after he died, Diane called me. Her voice was syrupy, with performative grief. "The lawyer is drafting an updated will," she said. "Your dad wanted everything to be simple. You know how he hated fuss. He left the house to me so I can manage things, and there really isn't much else left after everything. I hope you understand." I was too numb to process it. I just said, "Okay," and stared at the wall for a long time after we hung up. It was only later, sitting in that recliner while she sorted through Dad's papers, that my brain started to catch up with my gut. She'd made an offhand comment about maybe selling the house if the market's right, and something in me snapped. "Did Dad talk to you about that?" I asked, because he told me a few times he wanted me to have this place eventually. That Mum wanted that too. Diane rolled her eyes. "Your father changed his mind. He didn't want you to be tied down by a house, that's what he said. He thought you'd be happier renting, being mobile. He said you're very independent, Emma. You don't need bricks and mortar." It sounded like something someone would say about my life, not something Dad would actually have come up with on his own. Dad's daydream, ever since I was little, was one day this place will be yours. He'd said it while we painted the fence, while we planted tomatoes, while we fixed the leaky tap in the bathroom. The idea that he just quietly reversed that and not said a word to me made my skin prickle. "Can I see the new will?" I asked, just so I know what's what. She hesitated just a flicker, but I caught it. "It's with the lawyer," she said smoothly. "I don't have a copy here. You'll see it at the reading. Honestly, Emma, I wish you wouldn't fixate on money at a time like this. Your father's barely gone." The shame rush was instant. "I'm not fixating on money," I said, too quickly. "I just want to understand." She gave me a tight smile. "Trust me. Greg trusted me. It's what he wanted." That night, back at my flat, I pulled out my own small folder of important documents. Birth certificate.
Unitranscript.
The copy of Mum's will I'd been given when she died. I read the line about the estate being divided among children until the words went blurry. The next day, I called Dad's old lawyer, the one who'd handled Mum's will, and asked, trying to sound casual, if he was still working with Dad. "He actually moved to a different firm a couple of years ago," the receptionist said. "But I can see here we drew up a new will for him 3 years back. It should still be valid unless he changed it elsewhere." 3 years ago was after he married Diane, before he got sick. My heart sped up. "Could I get a copy?" I asked. "I'm his daughter." She hesitated. "Legally, we'd need either your father's consent or a request from the executor named in the will."
I'm sorry.
"Who's the executor?" I asked. There was a pause. "It says here, primary executor, Emma Harris." "That's you, isn't it?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Yes," I said. "Yes, that's me." "Then you can make the request in writing," she said. "I'll email you the form." 2 days later, I was holding a freshly emailed PDF of Dad's will from 3 years ago, signed by him and witnessed by 2 people from the old firm. It left the house to me, outright. It left a portion of his savings to Diane in a lump sum and the rest to me. It explicitly referenced Mum's wishes. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding. Then I called Diane. Did Dad ever change his will after he did it with Thompson and Co? I asked, skipping hello. She sounded annoyed. I told you, the lawyer is handling it. I just spoke to his lawyer, I said. The one who drafted his will 3 years ago. He named me executor. He left me the house. Did he go somewhere else after that? The silence on the other end told me everything. That will isn't relevant anymore, she said finally, crisp as ice. Greg changed it. He wanted to streamline things. I was with him at the time. Where's the new one? I asked. With our lawyer, she said. You'll see it at the reading. Stop interrogating me, Emma. This is stressful enough. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so hard I had to sit on them. I'm not stupid. I know wills can be updated. People change their minds. Maybe Dad really had decided something different near the end. But there was something so slippery about the way she said our lawyer, the way she'd kept insisting there wasn't much left, that made my skin crawl. That's when I started digging. Dad had never been very digital, but his email was logged in on the old desktop in his study. Diane had told me to clear it out when I had the time. So one Saturday I did. I went through years of spam and newsletter subscriptions until I found a folder marked legal and financial. Inside were emails from Thompson and Co. confirming the will 3 years ago. There were also bank notifications, copies of insurance policies, and more recently messages from a different law firm, Diane's firm. One stood out, a draft of a new will attached, dated for weeks before Dad died, sent only to Diane, with the lawyer writing, "Once Greg signs the final version, we'll lodge it." The draft left everything to Diane. The house, the savings, the insurance. I wasn't mentioned at all. There was no signed copy in the email chain. There was, however, a PDF attachment labeled scanned_0021 PDF sent 2 days before Dad died, from Diane's email to their lawyer. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was the final will, bearing a signature that looked like Dad's but wrong. Shaky in all the wrong places, inconsistent with the way he signed on hospital forms the week before. The witnesses were 2 nurses I recognized by name. Both had been on shift when he was heavily sedated. Was it legal? Maybe. Was it ethical? It felt like a punch to the throat. The last piece clicked into place when I pulled Dad's bank statements through online banking. There were regular transfers, large ones, from his main account to Diane's over the last year. Some marked loan. Some with no reference at all. Meanwhile, she'd been telling me he was struggling, and that there'd be nothing left by the time this is over. I printed everything. The old will naming me executor. The draft new will. The suspicious final one. The bank statements. The emails showing Dad had wanted us both taken care of. Then I called Thompson and Co. again and asked to speak directly to the lawyer who'd worked with Dad originally. When I laid it all out for him, there was a long pause. On the face of it, he said carefully, "This raises serious questions about capacity and undue influence at the time of the new will, especially given the existence of a prior valid will. Can they just ignore the old one?" I asked. "Not if the new one is successfully challenged," he said. And that's how we ended up in the boardroom of Diane's law firm, with the family gathered for the reading of the will, expecting, I'm sure, a neat little speech about how Greg entrusted everything to his beloved wife, Diane, and maybe a token scrap thrown my way. Instead, as their lawyer started to drone through the final will, my lawyer, Dad's old one, now representing me, interrupted and said, "Before we proceed, we need to address the matter of this competing document and questions of capacity." Diane went sheet white. Now, in that glass-walled room, as I lay my stack of documents in front of the table, I feel strangely calm. Terrified, but calm. I'm not here to fight over every dollar, I say, my voice shaking but loud enough. I'm here because Dad trusted me to carry out his wishes, and you, I look directly at Diane, decided your version mattered more than his. Her mask cracks. "You ungrateful little," she starts, but the lawyer holds up a hand. We'll need to adjourn this reading until we've reviewed these documents, he says stiffly. It appears this matter is not as straightforward as we were led to believe. Diane's eyes flash. For a second, I see pure fury. Then she starts to cry. Not quiet tears, big, dramatic sobs about how she gave up everything to care for Dad, and this is how I'm repaid. I don't cry. I've already done my crying. Right now, I'm just done. Done being lied to. Done being told to be understanding while someone rewrites my life. If that makes me the villain in Diane's version of events, so be it. Okay, pause for a quick verdict on these people so far because this is already a whole soap opera. First, Opie me, but let's be meta, is not some greedy vulture circling her dad's estate. The fact she sat on her hands and believed that there's nothing left, sweetheart, line for weeks says everything about how hard she tried to give Diane the benefit of the doubt. The turning point isn't I want more money. It's this doesn't match who my dad was or what he said. That distinction matters. Diane, on the other hand, is textbook helpful caretaker who just happens to benefit massively from every decision the dying person makes. Does she deserve nothing? Not necessarily. She did show up to appointments. She did maintain the notebook. She did do the labor of being there. But the idea that this entitles her to secretly funnel cash, hide the original will, and conveniently produce a new one signed when he's heavily medicated? Absolutely not. That crosses straight from morally gray into, you are playing puppeteer with a sick man's life. The family hovering around the edges is painfully realistic. Aunt Nora's tight face, the uncle shifting, everyone wanting the reading to be neat and non-confrontational. People hate when someone pries up the floorboards of we're all fine and points at the rot. That boardroom is full of people who would prefer not to know if something shady happened, because knowing means choosing a side. The only person actually doing what the deceased explicitly asked, act as executor and honor his wishes, is Opie. And she's the one being painted as dramatic and ungrateful. Classic. Anyway, let's see how much worse and then better this gets. Update. Hi again. A lot has happened since that delightful little family showdown in the boardroom. The will reading was officially adjourned that day. The lawyers huddled, the relatives whispered, and Diane stormed out halfway through, crying that she couldn't stay in a room where she was being accused of crimes. No one used the word crime except her, but sure, go off. The following weeks were a blur of meetings, emails, and a crash course in probate law I never wanted. My lawyer filed a formal challenge to the later will, citing concerns about Dad's capacity at the time of signing and potential undue influence. We submitted the old will as evidence of his long-standing intentions. The hospital records became crucial. Turns out, 2 days before the final will was supposedly signed, Dad's chart noted confusion, disorientation, and fluctuating consciousness. He'd been on heavy morphine. One nurse wrote, patient unable to understand complex information, struggling to follow basic questions. Yet somehow, during that time, he apparently had the clarity to completely revoke his earlier will, cut his only child out entirely, and leave everything to his wife who stood to gain massively. Even some of Diane's defenders in the family had trouble swallowing that. The 2 nurses who'd signed as witnesses were interviewed. One admitted over the phone that she didn't remember much beyond. The wife said he wanted to sign something, and we were asked to witness it. They hadn't seen the document beforehand. They'd been told it was just paperwork. Meanwhile, those bank statements told their own story, a steady siphon of funds to Diane over the past year, even as she tearfully told me there was nothing left. Some transfers were labeled loan. Others weren't labeled at all. There was no formal loan agreement. When confronted, Diane's line was, Greg insisted on giving me financial security. He felt guilty that he might leave me with nothing. I don't doubt Dad worried about her. He worried about everyone. But the secretive nature of it, the timing, the complete rewriting of his previous wishes, it stank. Legally, this all went into the grinder. It didn't turn into some dramatic TV trial, but there were affidavits, mediation sessions, and more than one very tense family meeting, where Diane alternated between icy lawyer speak and sobbing martyr. At one mediation, she looked straight at me and said, "You know your father would be disgusted that you're dragging his name through the mud like this." I took a breath and said, "I'm not dragging his name through anything. I'm trying to honor the will he made when he was healthy, not when you pushed through, when he was half-conscious." The mediator actually raised their eyebrows at that. Not everyone loved that I refused to roll over. Some relatives took the, "Why can't you just let it go? You'll get something anyway" stance. A cousin messaged me privately to say, "I get where you're coming from, but it's just money," and she did take care of him. It wasn't just money. It was the house my parents built a life in. It was the future they'd explicitly planned for me. It was the principle that someone doesn't get to rewrite reality because it suits them. Eventually, the legal pressure started to bite. Diane's own lawyer, who had initially been very confident about the final will, went noticeably colder on her once all the medical evidence and bank transfers were laid out. It's one thing to defend a clean, clear late life will change. It's another to defend something that looks dangerously like coercion. We were heading for a full court battle when she caved. In the end, we reached a settlement. The final will was withdrawn from probate. The earlier will, the one that left the house to me and a portion of savings to Diane, was reinstated as the controlling document. Some adjustments were made. She got a slightly larger lump sum. I agreed not to pursue any claim about the pre-death transfers as long as no further surprises came to light. Was it perfect justice?
No.
Did it feel like I'd at least pulled the steering wheel away from a cliff? Yes. The day the settlement was finalized, I went to the house alone. Our house. My house now, in the legal sense, though it still felt like Dad's. I walked from room to room, touching door frames, running my fingers along the back of the couch where he used to fall asleep during cricket matches. In the bedroom, I opened his old bedside drawer. Inside was a small envelope with my name on it in his familiar, slightly messy handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a short note.
Ink.
"If you're reading this, it means I'm not there to argue with you about whether you should keep the house or sell it. Do what's right for you. But I want you to know, your mom and I always pictured you here, building your own life. If things get complicated, remember what we talked about with Thompson and Company. I trust you. Love, Dad." Underneath was a business card for Thompson and Co., with the lawyer's number circled and a scribbled line, "Executor, you, not Diane." I laughed and cried at the same time. Trust Dad to underline the important part. Reading that note didn't magically erase the months of tension, but it did something important. It reminded me that I wasn't just fighting a greedy stepmother. I was carrying out a promise. As for the family fallout, it's messy, but survivable. Some relatives quietly told me they were proud of me for standing up. Aunt Nora hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe and whispered, "Your mother would be cheering." Others are cooler. One of Dad's brothers clearly thinks I should have just let the widow have it all. He now shares passive-aggressive Facebook memes about ungrateful younger generations who feel entitled to their parents' hard-earned money. I muted him.
And Diane?
She moved out of the house. She posted a long, self-pitying status about losing my home to legal technicalities and being punished for loving someone too much. She blocked me after I commented. The legal technicality was called Dad's actual will. Do I feel sorry for her at all? On some level, yes. She hitched her entire identity and security to a man 20 years older than her, and when he died, she panicked and grabbed everything within reach. But understanding why someone did something doesn't mean you have to accept it. I've started slowly reshaping the house. Not erasing Dad or Mom, but making space for myself. I put the family photos back on the walls. I painted over the beige Diane loved with colors that feel like me. I turned Mom's old sewing room into a little office for freelance work I'd been too scared to try before. And, quietly, I've allowed myself to enjoy the fact that my future looks less precarious now. I can think about further study without panicking about rent. I can start a savings plan, not from zero, but from a place my parents intended to give me. The biggest change, though, is internal. For so long, I was the kid who didn't want to cause trouble, who tiptoed around adults' feelings, who believed that asking questions about money was rude or ungrateful. Now, I'm the woman who will stand in a glass boardroom with shaking hands and say, "No."
This isn't right.
And if that makes some people uncomfortable, good. Maybe they should sit with why. All right, time to do the character breakdown because this whole saga is a masterclass in who people become around money, grief, and power. Emma, Opie, she's the classic conflict-avoidant child turned reluctant adult bulldozer. Not because she loves the fight, but because silence became more painful than confrontation. What I really like about her is that she doesn't romanticize herself as some flawless crusader. She admits she believed Diane at first. She second-guesses herself. She feels ashamed even asking about wills. That's very real. Her turning point isn't greedy. It's protective. Once she sees the original will and the emails, she realizes this isn't, "My stepmother got a bit more than I expected." It's, "My dad's wishes are being overwritten while he's sedated." That's when she steps fully into her role as executor, which, by the way, is a job he specifically gave her. The fact she honors that, even when it means being painted as difficult, is huge growth. Diane, stepmother, simultaneously tragic and infuriating. On one side, she did what many partners do. She handled the logistics when sickness hit. She was physically present in hospitals. She probably did the unglamorous work of advocating with doctors. On the other side, she treated that emotional labor like a down payment on the entire estate. The secret bank transfers, the hush-hush new will, the way she constantly framed Emma as greedy for even wanting to see the documents, those are not the actions of someone acting in good faith. Her victim performance, "I gave up everything for him," is textbook manipulation. She could have had security and a relationship with Emma if she'd honored the original will and talked openly. Instead, she chose control and martyrdom.
Dad.
He's absent physically, obviously, but very present in the moral structure of the story. His note in the drawer is devastating in the best way. He did the responsible thing, made a clear will when healthy, named an executor, talked to his daughter about his plans. Where he arguably failed was in not anticipating just how forceful Diane might be at the end, but honestly, sick and dying people don't always see the full political landscape around them. He did enough that Emma could pick up the trail and protect his wishes. That matters. The extended family, they're the Greek chorus of discomfort. Some instantly default to "don't rock the boat, just let the widow have it." Others quietly support Emma, but don't want to be seen as taking sides. This is painfully realistic. In inheritance battles, most people aren't mustache-twirling villains. They're just conflict-averse spectators who would rather pretend everything's fine than look at how unfair it is. The standouts are Aunt Nora, immediate empathy, clear moral compass, and the uncle who sulks via Facebook memes, the embodiment of "I don't understand the situation, but I have feelings about it." The lawyers, honestly unsung heroes. Dad's original lawyer does exactly what a good professional should. He honors his previous client's intentions, raises flags about capacity, and doesn't let a sketchy late-stage will slide just because it's easier. Diane's lawyer, to their small credit, backs away once things look dodgy instead of doubling down on the fraud. Overall, this isn't a story about evil stepmother versus perfect daughter. It's about what happens when one person sees vulnerability as an opportunity and another sees it as a responsibility. Emma isn't fighting to snatch cash out of a grieving widow's hands. She's fighting to keep her dad's voice in the room after he's gone. And in the end, that's exactly what an executor, and a good daughter, is supposed to do.